بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أبناء الطلاب وزملائي أطباء الدراسات العليا، يسعدني أن أقدم لكم هذه الأفلام التعليمية التي تتناول الجانب العملي لمادة التشريح. فنشاهد الآن هذا الشريط على أمل أن يحقق الفائدة المرجوة منه مع تمنياتي لكم بالتوفيق. يقول الله تعالى: وقل اعملوا فسيرى الله عملكم ورسوله والمؤمنون. صدق الله العظيم.
This is the back of the thigh. This is the long head of biceps femoris muscle. Notice its origin from the ischial tuberosity in common with the origin of the semitendinosus muscle. This is the origin of the semitendinosus. Notice that the long head of biceps crosses obliquely in the back of the thigh from medial to lateral. Over the sciatic nerve. Here the sciatic nerve runs vertically between the long head of biceps and adductor magnus muscles. Following the long head of biceps laterally and downwards, it leads to the short head of the same muscle, where both heads join. This is the short head of biceps femoris. It is thinner and short, and on its lateral side lies the strong lateral intermuscular septum, which separates it from the vastus lateralis muscle. This lateral intermuscular septum extends from the deep aspect of the iliotibial tract deeply to the linea astra. The long head of biceps gets its nerve supply from the medial side of the sciatic nerve, while the short head gets its supply from the lateral side of the nerve. The biceps femoris is flexor and the lateral rotator of the leg. This is the tendon of insertion of the muscle to the head of the fibula. It overlies the fibular collateral ligament. It forms the upper lateral boundary of the popliteal fossa. This is the fibular collateral ligament deep to the tendon of the biceps. Notice that the common peroneal nerve runs along the medial border of this tendon on its way to the back of the head of the fibula. This is the head of fibula. This is the common peroneal nerve. This is the semitendinosus muscle. It is thus called because its distal half is tendinous while its proximal half is fleshy. You can see its long tendinous part. Notice that it arises in common with the long head of biceps and that it lies over the semimembranosus muscle. It gets its nerve supply from the medial side of the sciatic nerve. This is its nerve supply. The tendon of the semitendinosus muscle runs on the medial side of the back of the thigh to form the upper medial boundary of the popliteal fossa, together with the semimembranosus and the tendon of adductor magnus muscle. This is the semimembranosus muscle. It lies deeper to the semitendinosus. It is fleshy below, but membranous above, which is the reverse of the semitendinosus. This is the membranous upper part of the muscle, which is so extensive that the muscle is called semimembranosus. It takes its nerve supply from the medial side of the sciatic nerve. It is now clear that the three hamstring muscles arise from the ischial tuberosity. This is the long head of biceps. This is the semitendinosus combined with the biceps. This is the semimembranosus. The tendons of insertion of these three muscles run downwards to bound the popliteal fossa. This is the adductor magnus muscle. It lies deep to the hamstring muscles. Here is its upper border, which lies edge to edge with the quadratus femoris. The sciatic nerve runs downwards over its surface, and it is perforated by the perforating arteries of the profunda femoris. These are the perforating arteries. Note that the adductor magnus is formed of a pubic part attached to the side of the pubic arch and an ischial part attached to the ischial tuberosity. This is the ischial part. Notice that the upper fibers of the muscle have a horizontal direction, but its lower fibers become progressively oblique to end below in the adductor tubercle. The muscle is inserted along a line extending from the gluteal tuberosity, the linea aspera, the medial supracondyle line, and ending into the adductor tubercle. This is the tendon of the muscle which leads to the adductor tubercle. The muscle is perforated by the femoral vessels to become the popliteal vessels. These are the popliteal vessels, and this is the opening in the adductor magnus, which transmits the femoral vessels. The adductor magnus acts as a fleshy septum on the medial side of the thigh, separating the other adductor muscles in front of it from the hamstrings behind it. The cruciate anastomosis lies on its upper body. This is formed by 4 branches. First, the inferior gluteal artery from above, which is a branch of the internal iliac artery. Second, one of the perforating arteries from below. It comes from the profunda femoris. Thirdly, the medial circumflex femoral comes from the medial side. It is a branch of the profunda. Fourthly, the lateral circumflex femoral comes from the lateral side. It is a branch of the profunda. So, this anastomosis communicates the internal iliac artery with the femoral artery just below the inguinal ligament. This is the medial circumflex artery. emerging at the upper border of the muscle. This is the sciatic nerve. It descends deep to the long head of the biceps and gives off branches to the biceps femoris, to the semitendinosus and to the semimembranosus muscles. It ends below by dividing into two main divisions, the common peroneal and the tibial nerves. The common peroneal runs downwards and laterally along the medial border of the tendon of the biceps femoris, while the tibial nerve descends vertically in the midline. Now, let us move to the popliteal fossa. This is the popliteal fossa. It is diamond in shape. Its upper lateral boundary is formed by the tendon of the biceps femoris, while its upper medial boundary is formed by the tendon of the semitendinosus, semimembranosus, and the adductor magnus muscles. The lower lateral boundary is formed by the lateral head of the gastrocnemius and the belly of the plantaris muscles. The plantaris muscle is absent in this body, but when present, it lies just medial to the lateral head of the gastrocnemius. The lateral head of the gastrocnemius is crossed by the common peroneal nerve. The lower medial boundary of the popliteal fossa is formed by the medial head of the gastrocnemius muscle. The fossa is roofed by deep fascia and is pierced by the short saphenous vein. The floor of the fossa is formed by the popliteal surface of the femur, back of the knee joint, and the popliteus muscle. The main contents of the fossa are the popliteal vessels and the two divisions of the sciatic nerve, namely the tibial and the common peroneal nerves and their branches. This is the popliteal artery as it appears from the opening in the adductor magnus as the continuation of the femoral artery. It runs in direct contact with the floor of the fossa as the deepest structure. It runs downwards from the upper medial boundary of the fossa towards the midline of the fossa. It gives off the superior lateral genicular branch, which runs laterally above the lateral condyle of the femur, and the superior medial genicular, which runs medially above the medial condyle of the femur. At the midline of the fossa, the popliteal artery is covered by the popliteal vein and the tibial nerve. This is the cut end of the popliteal vein. This is the tibial nerve, and it runs exactly vertically in the midline, superficial to both the artery and the vein. The tibial nerve gives muscular branches to the muscles while in the popliteal fossa. This is the branch to the medial head of gastrocnemius. This is the branch to the lateral head. This is the branch to the soleus. This is the branch to the popliteus. The nerve to the popliteus runs over the superficial surface of the muscle to wind around its lower border to gain its deep surface. These are the inferior medial genicular vessels. Passing below the medial tibial condyle, and these are the inferior lateral genicular vessels passing below the lateral tibial condyle. These are the middle genicular vessels tracing the back of the capsule of the knee joint. Note that the common peroneal nerve does not give any muscular branches while passing through the popliteal fossa. The tibial nerve gives off only one cutaneous branch while passing through the popliteal fossa. It is the sural nerve. This is the sural nerve. It descends beneath the deep fascia of the leg between the two bellies of the gastrocnemius muscle, in company with the short saphenous vein. It is joined by a sural communicating nerve, which arises from the common peroneal. This is the common peroneal nerve. It runs in the lateral part of the popliteal fossa and gives off two cutaneous branches while in the fossa. These are the lateral cutaneous nerve of the calf, which supplies the skin of the calf, and the sural communicating nerve, which joins the sural nerve. The common peroneal crosses the back of the head of the fibula and the lateral side of the neck of the fibula, where it divides into two main divisions: the deep peroneal and superficial peroneal. This is the superficial peroneal nerve, which runs downwards in the lateral compartment of the leg and supplies only the peroneus longus and brevis. This is the deep peroneal nerve. It enters the anterior compartment of the leg to supply all the extensor group of muscles. Note that the common peroneal nerve is exposed to injury in fracture of the neck of the fibula. Now, let us move to the back of the leg. This is the back of the leg. This is the superficial group of muscles of the calf. These muscles are the gastrocnemius, plantaris, and soleus. The deep group of muscles consists of the popliteus, tibialis posterior, flexor digitorum longus, and flexor hallucis longus. This is the gastrocnemius muscle. It has two heads of origin, a medial head and a lateral head. They arise from the back of the lower part of the shaft of the femur, just above the two condyles. They form the lower boundary of the popliteal fossa. The two bellies join each other at about the middle of the back of the leg. The groove between the two heads lodges the small saphenous vein and the visceral nerve. The two bellies fuse with the back of the soleus to form together one mass, which is inserted by a common insertion called the tendocalcaneus. This is the tendocalcaneus, inserted into the back of the calcaneus. This is the shoulder nerve, running in company with the short saphenous vein between the two heads of the gastrocnemius. They run downwards along the lateral side of the tendocalcaneus to the lateral side of the ankle joint and continue on the lateral side of the foot. This is the soleus muscle. It lies deep to the gastrocnemius. It arises from the back of the tibia and from the back of the fibula. It also arises from the fibrous arch which crosses over the tibial nerve and posterior tibial vessels. This is the fibrous arch. The soleus muscle is inserted with the gastrocnemius by the tendocalcaneus. Immediately above the origin of the soleus, the popliteus muscle lies. This is the popliteus muscle. It is inserted into the back of the upper part of the tibia. The popliteal vessels and the tibial nerve run downwards over it and at its lower border. The popliteal artery ends by dividing into the anterior and posterior tibial arteries. This is the posterior tibial artery and this is the anterior tibial artery. The posterior tibial artery runs downwards in the posterior compartment of the leg, between the superficial of muscles. The anterior tibial artery runs forwards through the interosseous membrane to reach the anterior compartment of the leg. The plantaris muscle is absent in this body. When present, it has a small belly situated just medial to the lateral head of the gastrocnemius. It ends in a thin, long tendon, very similar to the palmaris longus in the forearm. Its tendon runs downwards between the gastrocnemius and soleus to be inserted with them into the back of the calcaneum. Deep muscles of the leg. These are four muscles which lie deeply in the back of the leg. The popliteus, flexor digitorum longus, flexor hallucis longus, and the tibialis posterior. This is the popliteus muscle. It is the highest muscle of the group and lies edge to edge with the soleus. This is the flexor digitorum longus, descending over the back of the tibia. It arises from the back of the tibia. This is the flexor hallucis longus, descending over the back of the fibula. and arising from it. Its fleshy fibers continue to the lower end of the leg, and its tendon is not easily seen in the leg. This is the tibialis posterior muscle. It is deeply placed and is overlapped by the flexor digitorum longus and the flexor hallucis longus on either side. The tibial nerve and vessels run vertically over its surface between the flexor digitorum longus medially and the flexor hallucis longus laterally. It arises from both the tibia and the fibula, as well as from the interosseous membrane. Note that the flexor digitorum longus is medial to the tibialis posterior, but at the lower end of the tibia, the tendon of the tibialis posterior comes medial to that of the flexor digitorum longus. This is the tendon of tibialis posterior muscle. It is the most medial structure on the back of the medial malleolus. This is the tendon of flexor digitorum longus muscle, crossing over the tendon of the tibialis posterior muscle. This is the tibial nerve at its origin from the sciatic nerve at the upper angle of the popliteal fossa. It is lateral to the popliteal artery, but it descends downwards and medially to come directly posterior to the artery in the middle of the popliteal fossa. In the leg, it continues its course with the posterior tibial artery till it reaches deep to the flexor retinaculum, where it is again lateral to the artery and divides into two divisions called medial and lateral plantar nerves. This is the posterior tibial artery. It arises at the lower border of the popliteus muscle as one of the two main divisions of the popliteal artery. It descends deep to the soleus. Between it and the deep groove of muscles in the back of the leg, especially the tibialis posterior. The posterior tibial artery gives off a big branch called the peroneal artery, about 2 inches below its origin. This peroneal artery runs obliquely downwards and laterally towards the fibula and appears deep to the flexor hallucis longus between it and the fibula. At the lower end of the leg, the peroneal artery communicates with the posterior tibial through the communicating artery. It ends by giving a perforating artery which descends in front of the lateral malleolus. At the lower end of the leg, the tibial nerve and posterior tibial artery run deep to the flexor retinaculum of the ankle. This is the flexor retinaculum of the ankle. It overlies the formed structures which pass deep to it. From medial to lateral they are the tibialis posterior muscle, which is the most medial, flexor digitorum longus, posterior tibial vessels, tibial nerve, then the flexor hallucis longus, which is the most lateral. Deep to the flexor retinaculum, the tibial nerve divides into medial and lateral plantar divisions. And also the posterior tibial artery divides into medial and lateral plantar divisions. These plantar nerves and vessels pass to the sole of the foot deep to the abductor hallucis muscle, which lies on the medial side of the sole. This is the abductor hallucis muscle, bridging over the plantar nerves and vessels as they enter the sole of the foot. Notice that the flexor digitorum longus muscle lies medial to the tibialis posterior while in the leg, but crosses over it near the ankle to come on its lateral side deep to the flexor retinaculum. This is the tendon of the flexor hallucis longus lying on the undersurface of the sustentaculum tali. This is the tendon of the tibialis posterior muscle, passing to its insertion into the tuberosity of the navicular bone. This tendon is also inserted into the rest of all the tarsal bones except the talus. Close to its insertion into the navicular bone, the tendon of tibialis posterior supports the spring ligament from below. This is the spring ligament, which supports in its turn the head of the talus, thus preventing the flattening of the medial longitudinal arch of the foot. The sole of the foot. This is the plantar aponeurosis covering the flexor digitorum brevis. The aponeurosis begins behind at the calcaneus and extends distally to be attached by 5 slits into the sides of the metatarsophalangeal joints. At its lateral edge, it gives a lateral septum, and at its medial edge, it gives a medial septum. These septa dip into the sole to divide it into 3 compartments: medial, intermediate, and lateral. The sole is formed of 4 layers of muscles, the first of which consists of 3 muscles. These are the abductor hallucis, flexor digitorum brevis, and abductor digitae minimi. This is the abductor hallucis on the medial side, and this is the abductor digitae minimi on the lateral side. This is the flexor digitorum brevis, lying immediately beneath the plantar aponeurosis. It arises posteriorly from the calcaneus and extends anteriorly, where it divides into 4 slender tendons to the lateral 4 toes. By reflecting the flexor digitorum brevis, the second layer of the sole of the foot is exposed. This layer consists of the tendon of the flexor digitorum longus, the tendon of the flexor hallucis longus, the accessorius muscle, and the four lumbricals. These are the four lumbricals. The first, the second, the third, and the fourth. They arise from the four tendons of the flexor digitorum longus. This is the accessorius muscle, extending between the calcaneus posteriorly and the tendon of the flexor digitorum longus anteriorly. Note that the lateral plantar nerve and the vessels run over its surface. The muscle arises by two heads, which embrace the calcanean tuberosity. This is its medial head, and this is its lateral head. It is inserted into the tendon of the flexor digitorum longus. Note also that the tendon of flexor digitorum longus crosses the tendon of the flexor hallucis longus from below and are fused together at the point of crossing. This is the lateral plantar nerve accompanied by the lateral plantar vessels. They run over the surface of the flexor accessorius towards the base of the fifth metatarsal bone. In this part of their course, they run between the first and second layers of the sole. At the base of the fifth metatarsal bone, the lateral plantar nerve and lateral plantar artery give deep and superficial branches. This is the deep branch of the nerve, and this is the deep branch of the artery. The deep branches dip into the sole between the third and the fourth layers, where the artery forms the plantar arch. This is the superficial branch of the nerve. The superficial branch of the artery has been cut. This is the medial plantar nerve and artery. They run straight forwards to the interval between the first and second toes, in the interval between the abductor hallucis medially and the flexor digitorum brevis laterally. This is the tendon of the flexor hallucis longus muscle running forwards to its insertion into the base of the terminal phalanx of the big toe. It lies over the flexor hallucis brevis. This is the flexor hallucis brevis, which is one of the muscles of the third layer of the sole. By reflecting the tendon of the flexor digitorum longus, the third layer of the sole is displayed. This is the third layer of the sole. It is formed of three muscles: the flexor hallucis brevis medially, the flexor digiti minimi laterally, and the adductor hallucis in between. The flexor hallucis brevis has two heads of insertion, a medial head and a lateral head. The medial head is inserted in common with the tendon of the abductor hallucis. The lateral head is inserted with the tendon of the adductor hallucis. This is the adductor hallucis, and this is its oblique head, which is the main head, and this is its transverse head. The two heads of origin join each other and are inserted in common with the lateral head of the flexor hallucis brevis. The flexor digiti minimi is related to the fifth metatarsal bone. This is the deep plantar arch, which is the continuation of the deep branch of the lateral plantar artery. It runs from lateral to medial, deep to the adductor hallucis, that's to say, deep to the third layer of the sole. It ends medially by joining the termination of the dorsalis pedis artery. In the concavity of this plantar arch lies the deep branch of the lateral plantar nerve. The fourth layer consists mainly of the interossei and the tendons of the peroneus longus and tibialis posterior muscles. These are the interossei. This is the tendon of the peroneus longus crossing the sole of the foot from lateral to medial, and it is covered by the long plantar ligament. This is the long plantar ligament, which is cut to expose the tendon of the peroneus longus. Now let us move to the lateral compartment of the leg. The lateral compartment contains the peroneus longus and the peroneus brevis muscles. The peroneus longus is superficial to the brevis. This is the peroneus longus. It arises from the upper two-thirds of the lateral aspect of the fibula. This is the peroneus brevis. It arises from the lower two-thirds of the lateral surface of the fibula. These are the tendons of the two peronei, passing deep to the peroneal retinaculum. This is the tendon of peroneus longus, passing below the tendon of the peroneus brevis to run in a groove on the plantar surface of the cuboid bone. It runs medially in the fourth layer of the sole of the foot to reach its insertion into the base of the first metatarsal and into the medial cuneiform bone. This is the tendon of the peroneus brevis. It runs forwards to its insertion into the tuberosity of the base of the fifth metatarsal bone. It has a special compartment separate from that for the peroneus longus, with the peroneal tubercle in between. Notice the insertion of the peroneus tertius into the base of the fifth metatarsal bone just medial to the peroneus brevis. This is the common peroneal nerve. It winds round the lateral side of the neck of the fibula. It gives off the recurrent genicular nerve. And then divides into two divisions, which are the deep peroneal and superficial peroneal. The recurrent genicular nerve pierces the upper part of the tibialis anterior muscle and ascends to the knee joint. This is the deep peroneal nerve, which pierces the extensor digitorum longus to enter the anterior compartment of the leg. This is the superficial peroneal nerve. It gives muscular branches to the upper part of the peroneus longus and descends deep to the along the anterior border of the peroneus brevis muscle and pierces the deep fascia in the lower third of the leg to become superficial. It supplies the peroneus longus and the brevis. This is the branch to the peroneus brevis. The superficial peroneal nerve ends by becoming cutaneous to supply most of the skin of the dorsum of the foot. Now let us move to discuss the front of the leg and dorsum of the foot. The muscles of the front of the leg are the following: tibialis anterior, extensor digitorum longus, peroneus tertius, and extensor hallucis longus. These muscles are kept within a tight osteophacial compartment because of the covering the thick deep fascia. These muscles are better identified as their insertions because at their origin they form a more or less fused mass. This is the tendon of insertion of the tibialis anterior. It curves on the medial side of the foot to get attachment into the base of the first metatarsal and the medial cuneiform bone. This is the tendon of the extensor hallucis longus, running on the medial side of the dorsum of the foot, down to the base of the terminal phalanx of the big toe. This is the tendon of the extensor digitorum longus, dividing into 4 slips going to the lateral 4 toes. This is the tendon of the peroneus tertius going to the base of the 5th metatarsal bone. All the contents of the anterior compartment of the leg pass deep to the extensor retinacula. There are 2 extensor retinacula. The superior extensor retinaculum stretching between the tibia and fibula, and the inferior extensor retinaculum, which is Y-shaped. The stem of the inferior extensor retinaculum arises from the lateral side of the calcaneus and bifurcates into 2 limbs. The upper limb is attached to the tibia and its lower limb is attached to the medial side of the foot. The structures that pass underneath the extensor retinacula are the following. For medial to lateral, the tibialis anterior being the most medial. Then the extensor hallucis longus, anterior tibial vessels and deep peroneal nerve, and most laterally is the extensor digitorum longus. This is the origin of the tibialis anterior muscle. It arises from the lateral aspect of the tibia. The medial aspect of the tibia is subcutaneous, giving no muscle attachment. This is the anterior border of the tibia called shin. This is the extensor hallucis longus muscle. It arises from the middle two quarters of the tibia. Its tendon lies at first lateral to the anterior tibial vessels and deep peroneal nerve, then crosses over them at the end to come to their medial side on the dorsum of the foot. This is the dorsalis pedis artery on the lateral side of the tendon of the extensor hallucis longus. The tendon is a guide to palpate the pulsation of the artery during the clinical examination of a patient. This is the fleshy mass of the extensor digitorum longus, arising from the upper three quarters of the front of the tibia. The peroneus tertius forms the lower part of the fleshy mass of the extensor digitorum longus, and its tendon is lateral to the extensor tendons. This is the deep peroneal nerve and the anterior tibial vessels are running deeply in the anterior compartment of the leg. The deep peroneal nerve is a branch of the common peroneal, which winds round the lateral side of the neck of the tibia. It runs directly on the anterior surface of the interosseous membrane between the tibialis anterior and extensor hallucis longus. Then gradually comes near the surface at the ankle. The deep peroneal nerve, as it enters the dorsum of the foot, divides into two terminal divisions. The lateral division, which disappears deep to the extensor digitorum brevis, and the medial division, which runs in company with the dorsalis pedis artery. To the space between the first and the second toes. It supplies the skin of this space only. Note that the other areas of the skin of the dorsum of the foot are mainly supplied by the terminal branches of the superficial peroneal nerve. The deep peroneal nerve supplies all the muscles of the anterior compartment of the leg as well as the extensor digitorum brevis. The anterior tibial artery is a branch of the popliteal artery. It arises on the back of the leg at the lower border of the popliteus muscle. It pierces the interosseous membrane and reaches the front of the leg medial to the neck of the fibula. Here, the artery is medial to the deep peroneal nerve. The anterior tibial artery runs with the deep peroneal nerve on the interosseous membrane between the tibialis anterior and the extensor digitorum longus, then between the tibialis anterior and the extensor hallucis longus. Near the ankle, it is crossed by the extensor hallucis longus, which comes to its medial side, and the nerve is here lateral to the artery. As it enters the dorsum of the foot, it becomes the dorsalis pedis. The dorsalis pedis artery runs towards the space between the first and second metatarsals, where it sinks through the base of this space to enter the sole of the foot, where it joins the plantar arch. The dorsalis pedis gives off the lateral tarsal and the arcuate branches. The lateral tarsal artery runs on the lateral side and shares in the anastomosis around the ankle, while the arcuate artery runs laterally over the bases of the metatarsal bones and gives off dorsal metatarsal arteries. The dorsalis pedis is accompanied by the medial division of the deep peroneal nerve, and both structures run along the lateral side of the tendon of the extensor hallucis longus muscle. The tendon of the extensor hallucis brevis muscle, which is the medial slit of the extensor digitorum brevis, crosses the terminal end of the dorsalis pedis artery to reach its insertion into the proximal phalanx of the big toe. This is the fleshy mass of the extensor digitorum brevis, lying deep to the tendons of the extensor digitorum longus. The tendons of the extensor digitorum brevis run to the medial 4 toes, but not to the 5th. Its medial slit to the big toe forms run along the lateral side of the tendon of the extensor hallucis longus muscle. The tendon of the extensor hallucis brevis muscle, which is the medial slit of the extensor digitorum brevis, crosses the terminal end of the dorsalis pedis artery to reach its insertion into the proximal phalanx of the big toe. This is the fleshy mass of the extensor digitorum brevis, lying deep to the tendons of the extensor digitorum longus. The tendons of the extensor digitorum brevis run to the medial 4 toes, but not to the 5th. Its medial slit to the big toe forms the extensor hallucis brevis. The tendons of the extensor digitorum brevis are inserted together with those of the extensor digitorum longus into the extensor expansion. The extensor expansion lies on the dorsum of the proximal phalanx. Through this expansion, the muscles are inserted into the bases of the middle and the terminal phalanges.